And from a marketing, putting your marketing hat on in an attempt to tie some of this together, what role does consistency play in a successful marketing and branding campaign? Like if you're talking to a secular client, or if you're talking to a political candidate, what role does consistency play in a successful campaign?
Consistency is everything. I mean, if one cannot see, if your first purchase of Tropicana, no pulp orange juice was exactly that, you go, okay, great. This was my first experience. I'm willing to try it again. The second one was great. Same exact result. No pulp, ripe orange juice. Third time, it was a little sour. You're like, okay, maybe. I might try it again. The fourth time, if you have no pulp orange juice and it has pulp in it, you're like, wait a minute. Apparently, somebody sleep at the wheel. We tend to ask God to cover that mistake or that opportunity in our outreach efforts. God should cover that. They should know that God is. And yes, God is all them things. And then you can throw all the names out there, right? Jehovah Jireh. Let's go do all of that. That's great. Still, at the end of the day, I'll be very honest, this is probably treading some waters that some may find challenging. However, your preaching is not the end of it. It is the beginning of the experience, especially, for a visitor. It's part of the beginning, initial experience. That usher is part of the beginning, initial experience, right? So it's great. You hooped, you hit B flat and took it up, and that's great. And your musician followed you, and all of that made all the sense in the world. To your point, I left out feeling good. That was my initial cup of Tropicana no pulp. But throughout the week, have you given me another glass that was consistent in some way, shape, or form? When that deacon reached out, right? Because my name ends in B. So the deacon that has A through G, when he calls me, is his message, is his cup of Tropicana no pulp just as consistent as what I gave behind the sacred desk? When that individual comes with their child, is children's church and the instructor for children's church giving the same Tropicana no pulp cup to my child? All of those things matter because the variance in experience, consumer behavior is teaching us if something is not consistent, there are far many more options out there. Shop for the best value, the best bang for my buck.
Yep.
Yes, I'm saved and I'm sanctified. Say your salvation and your sanctification is absolutely amazing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to keep individuals in the seat, because they will take their saved and sanctified self somewhere else where they can have a different experience. And in today's time, trying to shame them into staying just does not work, especially for our young folk. I mean, our young folk, they treat that almost like, an errant Facebook post. They're like, great, I'm going to hide it or I'm going to delete it. I'm going to keep moving. New post in about 4 minutes.
Done.
So, it's just what it is. And so understanding that the Sunday experience is oftentimes the first experience. The consistency in the second, third, and fourth cup is what everyone else is able to do in that sales funnel, that conversion funnel. Because otherwise you get people that come down the aisle. They're excited about what the pastor said. They're excited about what they heard. But when it does not translate, they walk out.
Man, yeah, I'm thinking about moments where churches feel like that one block party they hosted, or they host once a year,
yeah,
is going to be it. or that one book bag giveaway a year is going to be it, or
Mhm.
that one Christmas dinner, Thanksgiving basket giveaway is it for the year for outreach. The intent, I get, but that once a year hit in your community is no different than going to the shelter once a year to serve soup,
Yeah.
or going to the shelter once a year to drop off an old suit you can't fit no more because you got too big.
Right.
That one drop off doesn't represent the net level of consistency to meet a need. You gave us, an example about your orange juice being inconsistent. Think about the inability of a church to be consistent in its outreach efforts. And, some churches may be asking right now, give me some examples of what it means to be consistent. One, you can't afford to do a cookout every weekend.
No.
You can't financially afford it. You can't afford it from a human resource standpoint. The utilities of the church can't afford it. It
Hmm.
gets old after a while. And if you don't have the same people doing it and they're not doing it in a professional manner, the food becomes inconsistent. Nobody really wants it.
Hmm.
But what is free is a consistent presence that says, I'm here to listen and show love.
Yeah.
You talked about the woman at the well, and that biblical example is an example of Jesus showing up for something else and
Right.
just engaging.
Right.
A conversation is free. Your time is free. That doesn't cost you a couple of pounds of ribs, a couple of pounds of chicken and fish, and some macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
Spending time listening, asking questions, genuinely inquiring about one's current position in life, and if you have a relevant testimony, sharing it.
Yeah.
I think one consistent thing churches can get better at is being consistent at shutting up if you have no relevant testimony.
Listen.
Everybody doesn't relate to the woman at the well.
Right.
You haven't had 5 lovers and a 6th one you're just sleeping with.
Right.
Everybody can't relate to the woman who's caught in adultery. Everybody can't relate to the guy who's been sick at the pool for 38 years.
Mhm.
Everybody can't relate to the person who had leprosy. Like
Mhm.
that. That's not. Everybody can't relate to having a possessed kid. So you
Mhm.
don't have a testimony, Malik, that relates to everybody. That's impossible.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
first of all, it's a lesson you got to reach out. And here's maybe a tip and trick that's relevant. You got to reach out to people who your testimony can naturally reach.
Hmm.
Like
But
that.
to your point, uh, you bring up such a critical point. Being all things to all men so that I may win them for Christ didn't mean that I had to have a testimony for every room that I went in. It meant
Right.
that whatever I needed to be in that moment after assessing it, I will do just that. And to
Yeah.
your point, sometimes it's simply just a listening ear. My theology goes out the door if my electric is off. I'm not trying to
It's true.
hear what you're telling me right now. God is good, God is great, but Pico said $372.68 gets my lights back on. Which and then and going back to New Birth and what Jamal is doing, not singling that one ministry out. There are thousands that are doing great things. But I remember one service he streamed where literally they walked up and said, "Look, anybody who's about to get kicked out, come up front," and they were giving them rent payments out. Now, obviously, every church can't do that. We know that the majority of our churches range somewhere in between 100 to 150 members, and that sometimes is the bulk of our footprint. However, some of the things that you are very excellent in, speaking to you, Dr. Clark, is the ability to set up the nonprofit arm, the ability to have that CDC. If you're in the footprint, being able to pull on resources that are already there, that don't require a second, third, fourth offering, a building fund, a capital fund, and none of those things. It requires someone who knows how to do paperwork, someone who's willing to go pick up those materials and resources as they're made available, and more importantly, a vision that says we're going to do the best with those things. Because if you plant and Apollos waters, then God comes and gives that increase. Those things don't require a lot of money. They may require some time and some effort and some planning. But those are the very things that should be a tenet of our responsibilities anyway. And so we should embrace those things. But that CDC is so critical, especially nowadays with the economic landscape that we have, the ability for you to buy up the block. The church should be the first talking about buying up the block and how it's done. And that CDC has the ability to lead the way on that. And I respect organizations, and I'm not singling anyone out, but like, the Project Homes of the world who are able to do some great work around the country. But every church should be focusing or partnering with other churches to develop CDCs or joint CDC efforts to buy up the block. And could you imagine where churches are in opportunity areas and opportunity zones? They have a commercial corridor, 2 or 3 storefronts that actually have a placard, similar to Project Home on that front that lets them know, hey, this property is owned by the church. This is a property that's going to help spawn economic development. You have a storefront where you take, stores or budding businesses, and you get them in there and you let them sit in there for 3 years, get them ramped up and help them move on to their next spot. And you bring another business in and help them do the same thing. Those are the kind of things that, our young future spiritual leaders, our young leaders are looking for. Those are the things that families are looking for. Churches that are saying, I'm beyond the 4 walls. I'm concerned about the 4 corners of the earth. Mm-hmm. And I'm concerned about the 4 corners of our community. And I'm going to make sure I cover that, if nothing else.
Yep.